This video is powered by the pros at Pascal Air Plumbing and Electric. Arkansas owned, Arkansas operated. GoPascal.com.
Wonder if Connor O'Gara got much sleep on Saturday. He had a lot of SEC spring game-ish things to watch, including Arkansas spring scrimmage. So maybe he spent yesterday just recovering and napping, or maybe he was just watching more. Connor, what was your weekend like?
Appreciate you shouting out my hard work on Saturday. Some of us have to grind, watch 7-8 hours of spring football. I'm not saying that I deserve an award for it. I would accept one. Look, it was a lot of spring football. It's really difficult to get in the right mindset because I'm so programmed to watching things on Saturdays and being able to just kind of process, okay, this is real. We feel like this is something that this is a real takeaway from a team, and also trying to tell myself like what's really not worth getting that excited about, and seeing a receiver make two ridiculous plays in space isn't anything to write home about. But yeah, I was dialed in all day Saturday. Can't say the same about Sunday. It was a kickback day, but we got after it. We watched a lot of football on Saturday.
Okay, then tell me one thing that you saw this Saturday that you feel you can believe in. And I know you're right, though. Like, some of the stuff that you see in spring games feels like smoke signals that aren't really signaling anything. But what do you feel that you saw that you can really trust?
Okay, so I'll tie it to I know where the bread is buttered here. I think it's super underrated that KJ Jefferson's going to be able to hand off the football and not get hit. I mean, I watched that spring game, and I thought to myself, wait a minute, he's going to be able to operate from under center. They're going to be able to execute some traditional handoffs in the Danny Enos offense, which is different from what was seen under Kendall Briles. Obviously, the tempo is going to be different. But KJ, who has been just an absolute beast and is somebody that has been incredibly durable, still, we have seen when Arkansas is struggling offensively, it's usually because KJ is not at 100%. And if you can do some things to make sure that he is healthy long-term, then that's great. And I feel like this offense is really going to benefit him in that way. And he's not going to have those hits add up to where we're talking about that in late October, early November, because that's what we forget. It's not just the carries. It's all of those hits that he takes on the zone reads, wherein he's not even the primary ball carrier. And I love being able to kind of see them in the spring scrimmage. And we're not calling it a game, but I thought that was actually like oddly encouraging on a day that, obviously they're going at a different speed.
Yeah, I was going to see how do you get, when you're not hitting, how can we tell the defense, how can you tell if you can tackle? And I didn't know if you thought Arkansas looked like they maybe had a little better athlete on that back end. Because last year, man, we were struggling on those back four and we weren't very good at tackling. Did we look any better on our back end this week?
No, not particularly, if I'm being honest.
Right.
It seemed like in both phases they were kind of having their way. And sometimes it's a little bit difficult to gauge that in a spring game. You could watch one game where, Florida in their spring game with Austin Armstrong, the defensive coordinator who's 29 years old, he looks like he's like 16 or 17. That guy is just like getting after it, and he's throwing all these different blitz packages. The offense is struggling. And then you see the Ole Miss spring game wherein Lane Kiffin tells Pete Golding, his new defensive coordinator, hey, you're going to run four base defenses. You're not going to blitz, and you're not going to tackle too hard. And you see the different results. So it's tough to kind of gauge when those variables are controlled so much. They've got a long way to go. And I think they need help. And I like the addition of Travis Williams to be able to run that defense. But they need help. And it's still a new scheme, and there's going to be a learning curve there. They still need to be able to get that defensive line help. I think that's the biggest area where hopefully they'll be able to add some guys in the portal. But, yeah, they looked like they were on their heels pretty much all afternoon.
So where Georgia might have –
That's what I was going to go, Phil. Was there a kid from Georgia that just went into the portal with D lineman? Yeah.
Bear Alexander, all-time name, too. I mean, who doesn't want to get a guy named Bear on their team, right? I mean, like, that just kind of makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that was a surprise too. I had Georgia fans texting me all Saturday morning, like, "Wait, what do you mean this guy's going into the portal?" This was supposed to be a guy that Trey Scott, their defensive line coach, was going to kind of build up to be the next great Georgia defensive lineman, and all of a sudden he hits the portal the first day that it opened. Now, there's a rule that I need to figure out in the SEC that I think that if it's the spring window, I don't think that you can go SEC to SEC. I think that rule is part of it. I'm going to have to double check and talk about this with Matt Hayes. We're still figuring out a lot of what the portal actually looks like. But if you go SEC to SEC in the spring window, I believe that you don't have immediate eligibility, and you would either have to work through the waiver process if you're an undergrad, or you would have to sit out a year. So I don't know how that impacts a team looking for a defensive lineman like Arkansas, but that's something to keep in mind. And I could be wrong. I need to fact check that, and I'll be able to kind of give you guys a more complete rundown of that.
Were there any of the quarterback battles that you feel might have been settled by whatever spring game they played in, or they're still, are most of these jobs just going to be up for grabs once it comes time to for fall camp?
I mean, publicly, some will say that they're up for grabs, but I watched Georgia, and if you're expecting this offense to kind of fall off, I think you got another thing coming, because I am a Carson Beck believer. I think he just looks so comfortable. Like that is not popular in this day and age, to sit 3 years on the bench as a blue chip recruit and then wait until year 4 to be the starter. That just doesn't happen anymore. But he's done that, and he looks like he's totally in control of this offense. Again, it's a spring game. It was a little bit different in the second half when he wasn't working with the ones, but he looks like he's going to be the heir apparent to Stetson Bennett. I was talking with my guy Brad Crawford about his Heisman odds. You're kind of looking at a guy who has all the ability to make these throws over the middle that are just so tough to defend. And Georgia, with those pass catchers, man, they might be really, really dangerous on the offensive side of the ball.
What about Ole Miss with Sanders and Howard and Dart? Because I mean that's an intriguing quarterback battle. I can't imagine anything was finalized over the spring at all.
Yeah, nothing was finalized, but I think there were some people who were writing off Spencer Sanders because, hey, if you haven't done it in the SEC, have you really done it? It's like, all right, well, this guy's a 4-year starter at Oklahoma State. He knows what he's doing, and Lane brought him in there for a reason, along with Walker Howard, the transfer from LSU, who looks really, really good in the spring game. I was just talking with Chris Doring an hour ago, who was on the call for the spring game, and he's saying, like, give me all the Walker Howard stock long term, but as for the immediate future, this battle is going to come down to Dart and Spencer Sanders. And I think Lane legitimately went into this not having anybody in mind as to who is locked in as his starter, but kind of wanted to see, like, how's Jackson Dart going to react to this? They were going to add a quarterback in the portal no matter what, because he was their only quarterback on scholarship in the spring until they added Sanders and Howard. But I thought Sanders looked awesome in the spring game, and I'm a believer. I think he's going to end up being the starter. I think that Dart, some of his limitations just kind of frustrate you, and I don't know if he fully gets it yet, and they don't necessarily have the downfield ability that you really need to execute that offense the way that Lane wants to. So I don't think that battle is decided, but I think a lot of people who were like thinking it's Dart and nobody else, I think they saw Spencer Sanders and were like, oh boy, we might have been wrong about that one.
Well, did you get to see any of A&M's, and how are they looking as far as they were kind of the biggest letdown last year? Do you think they bounce back this year?
Yeah, I mean, the offense with Bobby Petrino is something that I'm really interested in. And they're only going to show a limited amount in the spring game. It's not like they're out there running tempo the way that some of these teams like Ole Miss and Tennessee do. But, man, if you watch kind of early on when they were running with their ones, they're doing all this pre-snap motion and things that Jimbo Fisher wouldn't do as a play caller. And I think that's a positive. They ended up having a day offensively where you actually got to see some of their receivers make some plays in space, which they have not had that downfield passing game the way that they needed to. But, yeah, I mean, it's going to be Connor Wigman as a starting quarterback, despite the fact that, in my opinion, my very biased opinion, he spells his first name incorrectly with Conner. I won't hold that against him too much, but I think that you look at this offense, it's all about what Bobby Petrino is going to do. As Arkansas fans know all too well, man, that guy, when it's right, it is so fun to watch, and I'm very interested to see if he gets full control of that offense or if Jimbo Fisher is going to want to micromanage everything.
Were there any questions to Fisher about that? Sound to me like I read some of the transcript from Fisher. He called out a couple of media outlets that he was upset with the way that they write about him. He wouldn't answer a question from the Houston Chronicle or from the Sports Illustrated site that covers the Aggies. He only wanted to take his last question from the Tex Ags website. I found that interesting, man. I mean, the more I listen to Jimbo, the more I'm like, gosh, I just can't get with this guy. I just can't do it.
No, I'm right there with you. I think Jimbo is maddening. I think he's truly maddening as a coach. And And it's not to take away from his resume, and there are so few guys in this sport who can say, yeah, I've got one of these and show you a ring. And he has that. I mean, that is something that he will forever be able to hold on to. But, man, some of the things that he says just drives me absolutely nuts. Last year, when they finally have that offensive breakthrough against LSU where they're actually running tempo and they're running pre-snap motion, and Jimbo is asked about it afterwards, like, hey, like, you guys finally looked like you were in an offensive groove. And he says afterwards, show me a national championship team that ran tempo. And I'm like, what? What are you talking about? Like, the last 5 national champions, like, all had tempo as a big part of their offense, including the team that's running rickshaw in the entire league, Georgia, who is running that with Todd Monken. So, like, Jimbo, some of his approach is just so outdated. The fact that it took until now for him to get an offensive play caller in there, and the fact that it's Bobby Petrino is just so great for those of us on the outside world who are watching without necessarily a vested interest. But, yeah, Jimbo is absolutely maddening because he's never been wrong. He's never been wrong about anything at any point in his life. And as we know, that person is just always so fun to deal with.
Yeah, well, he can filibuster during the press conferences anyway because he's got the longest opening statement than any lawyer has ever had in their life. What about the attendance at some of these games? Because it looked like the attendance at the Arkansas spring scrimmage was fairly sparse, and you had pretty good weather for it. And there's some folks I talked to some media members that came to the baseball game afterwards, and they're like, man, I don't know why we're even doing this anymore. Is there a thought that potentially we might see some kind of a change in the event that closes spring practice? I know we've talked a little bit about trying to get teams to play each other, but I don't know the logistics of that, to be quite honest, because you're going to have a team that has to go on the road then for a spring game, but they don't get a home spring game. So I just don't know if that's going to be a thing. What is there and the other aspect of this too, like, who cares if people are at the big spring scrimmage? These aren't the days of 85,000, 90,000 people at a spring game like I guess it was 20, 30 years ago.
Well, they weren't streamed then, right? Yeah, it's like you didn't have a way to get the information.
Do we need to fix this, or does it need to be fixed, or is it okay the way it is?
I'd be okay fixing it. It's not. I mean, there are other things higher on the to-do list in college football. Fixing probably the transfer portal process, fixing targeting, just a couple of things. But I do think that there is a way to do this. I absolutely think there's a way to do this. And if you're a team at the group of 5 level, so let's say you were Arkansas State. I'm just picking this because it's the in-state example. But if you were Arkansas State, and if you were like, okay, what if we have this scrimmage with Arkansas and we're able to get 20% of the cut of whatever sort of in-game attendance numbers would be, like whatever that revenue is, and you just get 20%. That's still probably better than what Arkansas State is bringing in on a random day. And then to think, okay, we're going to actually get broadcast or streamed somewhere, which those group of 5 teams are not getting that kind of access. So you're getting more eyeballs on your program. You get a chance to do something that would be thought of as like, oh, David taking down Goliath. There's definitely motivation from that standpoint. And if you're like, all right, why would a Power 5 team ever agree to anything like this? I think some of them want the evaluation. Like listening to Hugh Freeze talk about this, like Hugh Freeze wants to be able to evaluate his roster and figure out which guys are good. I mean, which guys can actually show up on a given Saturday and, strap it on and look like they are ready to go. Because, you can also have quarterbacks live. If you actually try and evaluate your quarterbacks in a live setting and not a spring setting wherein they can't get hit, I think it's just different. So I do think there are positives. There would be logistics you'd have to work out, but I think that could be the next step. Maybe in the latter part of the decade, we'll see the ball get rolling a little bit more with that.
Get analysis of every play, prop, and point at BetOnline. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to sign up and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Be sure to use our promo code BELIEVE to receive your bonus. That's BLEAV. BetOnline.ag, where the game starts.